Hello, my name is Dan Skipbound, and this is the Top 5 Weekly, where myself and some guests, sometimes one person, sometimes two people, talk about a topic. And in this case, we're going to talk about young adult adaptations turned into movies because of Artemis Fowl coming out in theaters. Well, not really in theaters. It's coming out on Disney Plus. So because of the whole COVID-19. But like always, like I say, I can't do this show. It'd be pretty boring if I sat here and started talking all into a camera by myself. So I always have some guests with me. And I have a returning guest and a new guest. Mr. Malcolm Goldie-Lay and Miss Kelsey Kirkland. Malcolm, welcome back.
Hey, it's good to be back.
And Kelsey, thank you. We've been trying to get you on for a while now. Just working our schedules out. We found a topic. And,
yep. Finally figured it out. I'm so excited.
I was glad to finally get you on for an episode, and I know you're going to have a lot to say about this topic. Young adult adaptations, book adaptations turned into movies based on Artemis Fowl that's coming out on Disney Plus. It was supposed to come out a year ago, and then they moved it to May, and then needless to say, it's coming out on Disney Plus. And we are going to talk about a bunch of those type of movies. So let's not mess around here, and let's get into this. Malcolm, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is Love, Simon.
Hold on.
Oh, look at that. All right. So Kelsey's got Love, Simon on her list. So that means we got to hold on there. Now we're going to go to Kelsey's number 5.
All right. I had a hard time trying to say what my vibe was going to be on my list because I love young adult adaptations and there's so many good ones. So you probably got to kind of get the tone from my list based on this one. I did Princess Diaries based on the book Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot. This is very nostalgic for me. I think it came out when I was younger, but when I was like 13 or so, getting to see the high school experience and this awkward person finding out she's a princess and just her story. It's always been very important to me, and so I thought it probably needs to be on this list at least. So,
yeah, Malcolm, you don't have the Princess Diaries?
No, I mean it's one of those ones that I do like. It almost did make this list, but then I remembered another one which does fall under young adult, which we'll talk about later anyway. But no, I like it. It's a great movie.
Yeah, I don't have it either, Kelsey. So talk about it, discuss it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one reason I think it definitely speaks to people, especially young girls like me. When I read it, I was a young adult, and my daughter is now around that age and reading it, and it's a very good story about the teenage girl experience, like the awkwardness of having a crush on a boy that turns out to be is your friend, trying to deal with that, and then throwing it on top of that, she has to deal with finding out she is not the person she thought she was her whole life. Her dad's not the person she thought he was, and just it's the coming of age story, like turned on its head in a new way. Plus, it's very funny and sweet, and the cast is amazing, and it's I feel like it's very important, especially in my generation growing up. Girls, for sure. I think it's one of our movies.
Yeah, this is, if I'm not mistaken, is Anne Hathaway.
Anne Hathaway, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, she's fantastic. This is kind of, I guess, her coming out party really into the public eye, and she kind of went off on this and has had a great career since this. So yeah, this is definitely a good pick, and so I can see why you had this on your list, Kelsey. Malcolm, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, there's not much more to say, really. Julie Andrews was amazing in this movie as well. It's just one of those ones which I didn't think I'd love, but it's just one that as soon as I watched, I was like, this is a great movie, and just really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same here. All right, so my number 5 is, I'll tell you what, when I heard they were making this book into a movie, I really got excited. I ran out, got the book, read the book in like 4 days. I was so excited. And then the movie came out, and I was like, oh my God, it's different, but it's good in its own way. And it's rare that a movie can be different than the book, but be almost as good. I will have to say, I like the book a little bit better than the movie because they have some license, some creative license that they had to do with the movie that the book, you didn't have. You didn't have to worry about creative license with the book, I guess. And that is Ready Player One. Do either of you guys have Ready Player One on your list?
I took it off for another one. It was almost on there.
You knew exactly what I was talking about as soon as I started talking there, Kelsey.
Oh yes, I'm like, yes.
This is this world, and it's about this kid who basically has to go and discover this treasure based on this guy who left him these clues and stuff, and then the world around him gets involved in it, and he develops some friends that get involved with it. It's Ty Sheridan is the main kid, and then Olivia Cook is the main girl, and then there's another. And I should have had these people's names in front of me. I can't think of their names right now, but and it's just an adventure, and it's just a relationship thing that develops in the process of this adventure. But if you're a fan of 80s nostalgia, like Back to the Future and Iron Giant and so many different like video games of the 80s, Atari, stuff like that, you're just going to absolutely love this book turned movie. And the movie changes some things from the book because of rights issues. Like they put The Shining in there where The Shining wasn't in the book, which The Shining fits in perfectly in the movie. And it's like the changes, you're not upset with the changes, even though you kind of, in a way you are, but you're really like, wow, this is better than I thought it was going to be. Because I was going to like, man, how can they adapt this book? This book is so freaking amazing that I was like, oh man, I'm worried. But then coming out of it, I'm like, wow, this wasn't that bad. And so I wanted to put the Ready Player One on the list because I wanted to celebrate that book, which I absolutely love. This guy lives in the stacks, which is a pile of bunch of mobile homes stacked on each other, and he's poor, and he's I kind of have a soft spot for the kid. Malcolm, you got any thoughts on Ready Player One?
Yeah, I loved Ready Player One when it came out. This is one that I just went in. I didn't actually read the book for this, just because like when I go into movies based on adaptations, if I haven't read the book, I want to go see the movie first, because I know that there's always bound to be changes. But when I heard that it was so different from the book, I that was interesting, because it's one of those ones. Because I haven't read the book yet, but I do plan on getting it eventually. But I mean, with the rights issues and the fact that from what I've heard, the book was steeped in a whole lot of Steven Spielberg references, and Steven, like, when he made it, is like, I don't really want to put so much references to my own stuff in this movie. So he changed it up, and he even put some references to stuff which may not have been in the book because of when the book came out versus when the movie actually came out. Because I think there was some Overwatch characters thrown into the movie. I know that. I don't. Yeah.
Yeah, it really does have. If you're a fan of the 80s, which I am, I'm a huge fan of the 80s. I mean, the 80s, 70s, and 80s are my decades. And I have friends that they're half my age that love the 80s, that are big Back to the Future fans and all that kind of stuff. So the weird part about it is the 80s are 30 years ago. I mean, how can you believe the 80s are that long ago? I mean, it just seems like yesterday to me, because I just vividly remember so much of my childhood and growing up with those types of movies and TV shows and video games and all that stuff. Kelsey, you got any thoughts on Ready Player One?
I loved Ready Player One so much that it came out when I had a movie pass, and so I went 3 days in a row to go see it, because I'm like, okay, I need to see it again. Okay, I need to see it again. For many reasons, the plot, the characters like that, but also it is like one of the best like Easter egg movies ever made, where every time you watch it, you're like, I did not see that up in the corner there. Oh my gosh, there's a reference to this video game I played. Oh my God. There is so much packed into frame by frame of that movie that it's mind-boggling the care they took into making it and just making it such a real world, but yet it's also so beyond the imagination. Like you can't even imagine getting to experience actually being in the Oasis either. I love that movie. It's so good.
But definitely, I recommend to everybody before seeing the movie, read the book. That's just me. You know,
I love the book as well.
The book is, oh my God. When you read that book, you're like, there's no way they can make this into a movie. Oh. And when they were making it, Steven Spielberg was announced to make it, there was like people were saying, this is an unfilmable book. It's like an unfilmable book. And you're like, oh my God, that's the death knell. You're like, no, don't say that. But the movie turned out to be very good. Not the greatest movie, but very good. I mean, I cannot say anything bad about the movie. I think when you had the book to live up to, it was hard. It was hard to live up to the book.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Malcolm.
I mean, at this day and age, I don't think there is such a thing as an unformable book. I think that with the way the technology is improving, I think there's always, like any book when people say it's unformable, I think there's always going to be a way to form it. They may not be able to do it that year, but I think eventually they will be able to do it.
Yeah, we have the technology now to do anything we want to do when we put our minds to it. You're absolutely right, Malcolm. All right, so that's going back to Malcolm then with his number 4.
My number 4 is The Hunger Games.
Let me see here. I don't have The Hunger Games. I have a different Hunger Games. So you go ahead, Malcolm, unless Kelsey's got the Hunger Games. Yep. All right, so I got a different Hunger Games. So we'll get into that discussion a little bit later after you talk about this one.
Yeah. The first Hunger Games is my favorite. I mean, I love all the one of the franchises, but I think this first one sets up the book really well, and it is a great adaptation. It's back when Jennifer Lawrence was interesting in movies. So I know that lately, like especially in the later part of the X-Men, like she kind of just coasted on there. But with the Hunger Games, like it's just so much fun with just watching Katniss and all that. And this is one that I couldn't decide which one I wanted. I knew I'd love the first one, and the other one, I think Dan's probably bringing it might be the one that's pretty much tied for number 1. So I was like, I'll go with one of them, and someone might bring up the other. But yeah, it's a fun movie, which is weird to say about a dystopian movie being fun, but it's yeah. I don't really know what else to say at this point. I'm just rambling.
Yeah, that's fine, Malcolm. Kelsey, you got any thoughts on The Hunger Games?
The Hunger Games was a big deal for me when it first came out and I read it. I, at that point, was more into like the fluffy young adult books, the happier kind of thing like that. And it introduced me to a world of like darker fiction where things are tragic and horrible things are happening, but they're still great and interesting. It's actually kind of what made me segue into loving Stephen King so much. This was like my gateway, just like because I had not read dark fiction like that before. But yet, it's also there's still hope. The movie is, I feel, adapted very well. I was concerned because like how are they going to be able to classily do a movie where people are killing children? Like how are you going to do this and it not be like horrifying, which it is, but in a way that you're still okay watching. You know what I mean? Which I think is exactly what it should have been. They did a great job with that. So yeah, absolutely. This movie is incredible. It's a great adaptation and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I thought it was a very faithful adaptation, as a matter of fact, of the book. The books to me go from really good to not so good. That's in that order. But the movies go from good to great to not so good to not so good. So it's different how the movies change in my opinion as far as the books go. But The Hunger Games is pretty steady as far as it's very faithful to the book. The movie and the book are pretty. Gary Ross adapted it, right, Malcolm? Gary Ross, and Gary Ross was a very safe director. He wasn't going to go too crazy with it, but he wasn't going to go too safe with it either. So he was a good director to kind of do that world. And the thing is, he was used to working with smaller budgets. The first Hunger Games didn't have the biggest budget like the other Hunger Games had. So they didn't expand the world as much in the movie. So you're like, okay, they kind of get this thing, this kind of, it's set based a lot. It's kind of set in the same kind of spots a lot. And they didn't really go to that next level of expanding the world of Pan Am that much. But to discover the character of Katniss and so forth, and like Malcolm said, having Jennifer Lawrence as a breakout star, and she lands this similar to Kristen Stewart in a lot of ways. You're like, oh man, now you thrust this girl into this, and who is this girl? Yeah, she had Winter's Bone, but did we really know her from that much? Besides X-Men and this, and then like Malcolm said, people started getting kind of sick of her as her career went on because she started phoning in some of her performances. But she still will be remembered as Katniss Everdeen, and I think Gary Ross did a admirable job adapting this first book, and then of course other directors took over and expanded upon it. But yeah, I definitely like the Hunger Games, Malcolm. I just decided to put a different one on my list, so we're gonna have this discussion again in a little while. Kelsey, what is your number 4?
Well, speaking of Hunger Games and a little mention of Kristen Stewart, there is a certain franchise that I was super into when I was 16, and I have kind of since grown out of it, but now I have a daughter that's 10, and she is obsessed with the books and obsessed with the movies, and so I've watched them over and over again recently, and I have a very big soft spot for the first Twilight movie. So that's my number 4. I'm assuming neither of you have that.
No, we don't.
No, didn't think so.
That's close.
Oh, good. At least it was close. I didn't think it was gonna be close. But yeah, the books themselves I had never really read like vampire fiction like that. So Harry Potter was like my jam at that point. And then I was at a book fair, and so the person's like, I think you would like this. Here's Twilight. It's a new book. People are kind of talking about it. Apparently it's pretty popular. You probably would like it. So I did, and I read it all in one day, and I continued to keep up with the franchise, and then that movie came out. And it is my favorite of the franchise because the way it is filmed, Catherine Hardwicke, I believe, directed it, it's so different than the rest of the films. The colors are different. There's a beautiful, like, greenish blue tone to the entire film that I just love because that's what Forks is. Forks is a very mossy green area because of the way it rains there, and I think the way it was filmed is just gorgeous. And then the soundtrack, it is one of my favorite soundtracks still. I listen to it all the time. So that combination of the music and the way it's filmed and the characters being brought to life finally after I loved the book so much, I saw that movie like 6 times in theaters. So that's why I mean.
I will tell you, Twilight is not my favorite in the franchise. New Moon is actually my favorite.
That's my second. Yep.
I felt like New Moon actually got what they were going for in the books, the best of all the movies. And if anybody that knows me, they know that I'm a big fan of Kristen Stewart and Robert Pattinson in everything besides the Twilight franchise. Yeah. I just feel like if you haven't given them a chance in their career, you just don't know how great of actors they are. I mean, Kristen Stewart is phenomenal. Robert Pattinson is phenomenal. They just get shoehorned into this Twilight thing, and people think, oh, well, it's Twilight. They're not any good. Well, you just don't know movies. You don't know movies. You don't know actors. You just want to put your opinion out there, and you don't want to go and explore and check things out, like Into the Wild. Just so many different things. Good Time, High Life. There's so many. Robert Pattinson's been in The Rover. There's so many great Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart. Personal Shopper, Clouds of Sils Maria. They are both great actors.
They both deserve Oscars someday. I'm hoping they will get there.
I would love. I'll be honest with you. I would love that if these two got Oscars to prove people wrong. And that's why the Batman thing was such a big deal, because I was like, finally, he's going to get his justice. People are going to realize how great this guy really is. Yeah. And if they cast him as Batman and Bruce, he was, and then he's in the latest Christopher Nolan movie. People are wanting to work with him. They know what a great actor he is. Same thing with Kristen Stewart. But yeah, my favorite is New Moon. So, but I understand why you have Twilight on your list. It makes complete sense. Malcolm, you got any thoughts on Twilight or anything?
Yeah, but first, I see what you did there when you said Robert Pattinson will get his justice for playing Batman. But anyway, yeah. I think Chris Stewart and Robert Pattinson are great in Twilight as well. So I mean, and I mean, it's one of those ones like, these are the ones I did actually read the books before the movies came out, and like the way they performed in their characters in Twilight is the way that I kind of imagined them in the book. So it is a faithful adaptation in that way. So I mean, I mean, this is one of those ones that I consider Twilight a guilty pleasure for me as well, because it's one that like no one else seems to like. It's a fun movie, and it's enjoyable to watch. It's one of those ones that like making this list is like, I know I like this, but then it's like I like this one more. It's like it just ended up pushing itself out eventually. But
well, Malcolm, I don't know if people that know me, they know I'm a big fan of the Universal monsters. I love werewolves. I love Dracula. I love Frankenstein. So I'm a big fan of that genre. So when I heard, werewolves and vampires and it's teenagers I was like, all right, let me read these books. And I'm reading these books and I'm like, okay, I'm flying through these books like it's nobody's business. And then the movies come out and it's like, oh my God, these books are just like the movies. The movies are just like the books, but the books aren't that good reading. It's to me, they just weren't. It was just like, God almighty, these books are so immature reading. But I understand how people can get behind it. I completely understand why it became such a phenomenon. It wasn't for me because I was an adult man at the time. It's not geared for people.
I was a 16-year-old girl. I was their key.
Yeah, it wasn't geared to adult men. But when I hear about something, what I always do is, all right, well, I heard about this. I want to go to the source. So I go and read the books before I go see the movies, because I want to make sure that I'm up to date on what I'm going to see, and I know I have the knowledge. Same thing with the Hunger Games. I went and read all the Hunger Games books before the first Hunger Game movie came out to make sure that I know what I'm talking about. Same thing, Ready Player One. And I do that a lot with books turned movies. I did it with Artemis Fowl. I had not read a single Artemis Fowl, but when I heard the movie was coming, I'm going to read the first book. We'll get into that later. But yeah, Twilight it does have a audience, and that's the thing about it. And they made a lot of money, and they launched two great actors' careers, basically, even though they both had kind of roles before that, smaller roles before Twilight. But this is like the launching pad for the two of them. So I completely understand. Kelsey, you got any other thoughts?
Nope, I think I about covered it.
Okay.
Thanks for humoring me with my Twilight minute.
No problem at all. All right. My number 4 is and like I said, if you guys got this, just let me know. The Fault in Our Stars. Anybody got that?
No.
No? All right. The Fault in Our Stars is basically the movie based on the book. It's from director Josh Boone, and it has a cast of Shailene Woodley, Ansel Elgort, and it's basically the story of these two kids that kind of love each other, but one kid's sick. And it's Hazel Grace Lancaster is a 16-year-old cancer patient, meets and falls in love with Gus Waters, a similarly afflicted teen from her cancer support group. Hazel feels that Gus really understands her. They both share the same acerbic wit and love of books, especially Grace's touchstone in Imperial Affliction by Peter Van Houten. When Gus scores an invitation to meet the reclusive author, he and Hazel embark on an adventure in their brief lives. So that basically it's these two cancer patients who fall in love who go on an adventure together. Basically, they're not supposed to leave their hospital bed, and they just go to meet this author. Shailene Woodley is phenomenal in it. Ansel Elgort is phenomenal in it. This is what, when you talk about young adult books turned into movies, to me, this is the definitive kind of thing that you're talking about here. The Fault in Our Stars, because it's just young adult love, and it just so happens that these two are sick, and I know that's kind of like, oh well, they're using the cancer and stuff to do too. Well, I mean, I don't think that's a big a deal to me. I thought it was a great way to get into the story of these two characters, and I'm just such a big fan. I haven't seen Shailene Woodley in a lot since that HBO. I have not watched her on that HBO show with True Lies or something like that. And I've been meaning to get to it, and I just haven't got to it. But I have seen Ansel Elgort in a few things since this, and I really, really love Ansel Elgort, especially in Baby Driver. Oh God, this guy! The upside of him is so through the roof, in my opinion. I am just such a big fan of Ansel Elgort. And I had a few tears in my eye in this movie. I'll admit, I'm a man enough to admit I cry sometimes, and I get emotional in movies, and I did in The Fault in Our Stars. I really felt for these characters in this movie, and that's why it's on my list. Malcolm, you got any thoughts on The Fault in Our Stars?
I just haven't seen it.
Okay, that's fine. Look, Malcolm, there's things that I haven't seen, so you're entitled to not see everything. Kelsey, I'm sure you got some thoughts.
Yes, I have read the book and seen the movie. It was also one of those that almost made my list. This was a really hard list, because I could have made a top 20 list and been perfectly fine, because it almost made it, because it is a beautiful story. And I actually love that, where it comes from with the idea of these two kids who are ill being able to find love, because if you are, let's say, that age 16, you're going through similar circumstances, I could foresee having a sense of helplessness a little bit. Like, I'm never going to get to have my love story and things like that. And getting to see, yes, you can. There's hope that you can get to experience this too as well. And just seeing the way that their chemistry is amazing. Like his, kind of bad boy, sarcastic, and she's just so almost dry and strong. It's hard to explain, but just they work so well together. It seems very genuine, their chemistry. And the story about, I'm an avid reader as well, so that being her wish is get to meet this author, it's totally relatable to me, because Stephen King would probably be mine. I'd be like, I want to meet Stephen King before I go, because he is my favorite author. And so it is a very tender story. It is well shot, it's well adapted, it's cast perfectly. Both of them are stars. I think he's going to be in West Side Story, I believe, correct? And I am super excited for that, because he is so talented, and I'm very excited to see him and her doing future projects, because they're this is kind of also their launching pad as well. I mean, they've been on some other things here and there, but I feel like this is where they're just here they are, and they're show what they can do, and it really helped them become what they are today. So absolutely a great movie.
Yeah, and it's got some great supporting work from Lottie Verbeek, Willem Dafoe, Laura Dern, and Sam Trammell as the parents. Yeah. Very strong work from the parents in supporting roles. Usually the parents can be cliched and kind of not the best, but the parents really are great in The Fault in Our Stars. They really have some heart, and they put a lot of character into the parents, and they show that this isn't just some throwaway kind of story. Mm-hmm. It can happen to any kid in any town, in any state, in any country in the world, and the parents really have a heart about them and a care about them, and that is usually hard in the script writing process, to get the parents of supporting roles right. And when you get good actors like that doing these characters, they're going to turn out to be give good performances. So that was my number 4, The Fault in Our Stars. Malcolm, what is your number 3?
Mine is Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix.
All right, I have a different Harry Potter on my list, Malcolm. Kelsey, do you have any Harry Potter on your list? No? All right, Malcolm. I will tell you, Malcolm, real quick. It's my favorite favorite book because reading that book, I was blown away. I was literally blown away by that book. The movie, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this is one that I like because this also is my favorite book, but this is one that I loved. The way the adaptation. Well, yes, they did take some bits out, but to me, it's not bits that was that important to the story going on. Because from Goblin Fire onwards, I do like the fact that they chose to take the path of making sure they focused on Harry's story for the movies because that's what is needed. And you get some great performances like Imelda Staunton's Umbridge coming into this, and to me, this is kind of the turning point where the main trio starts getting into meteor roles. Like, well, Daniel sort of had his big moment in Goblet of Fire when his role started sort of getting more meteor and just getting into more theme. But I think this is where sort of Emma and Rupert kind of just started getting into this as well, just getting into more heavier stories and stuff. And this is like, I know a lot of people, and I presume this is probably one Dan's got on his list, go for a different Harry Potter one as their favourite, but to me, I like the way this one is adapted, and I just think it's great, and just to see a lot of the child actors actually come into their own and just becoming great actors and sort of bouncing off people like Maggie Smith and all that perfectly. I think it's just a great movie all around.
Kelsey, got any thoughts on The Order of the Phoenix?
Yes, it is one of my favorites. I think it's probably either tied for my favorite or maybe a close second, because my favorite character and acting performance throughout the whole entire franchise is Gary Oldman as Sirius Black, and I feel like that's one of the movies he does shine in. And Umbridge is one of the scariest, most evil human beings or wizards, or whatever, which is whatever I've ever seen in a book or in a movie, just because she's so like chipper about it, and yet she is just the essence of evil. And I love her character, and she was portrayed perfectly in that movie, so that elevates that whole movie to me. It's just, the movie's only as good as its bad guy, and she is a great foe to have in that movie. So I love this movie. I think it is definitely top 2 or 3 of the whole franchise, and I could totally see why it's your favorite, because it's very good.
Did Order of the Phoenix, Malcolm, was that David Yates?
Yeah, that's the first David Yates.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. And I read all the Harry Potter books like 5 times each, but I also listened to Order of the Phoenix because I wanted to hear that guy's voice read a book, because I hear that guy is amazing reading the book. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna have that guy read. And God, he read this book so amazing. But reading the books myself, I'm like, I can even the stuff with Dudley Dursley at the beginning of the movie with the Dementors and stuff. How are they going to film that? I can't wait to see how they film that stuff. I just would like salivating, like waiting for that stuff. And then, like you said, Imelda Staunton. I mean, could there ever be a more perfect casting in anything ever than Imelda Staunton as what's her name again?
Umbridge.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that scene when she's got them doing those cursed quills, whatever, and it's going into their skin. The I'm like, you're just like, oh my God, that's got to be gruesome. That's got to be ridiculous. And then when you're seeing it on screen actually happen, and it's like, I just felt like, and you touched on it, Malcolm. These movies would be 4 hours if they added all the subplots from the books. True. And I thought the best subplots in all the movies were in Order of the Phoenix. I felt like Order of the Phoenix had some great subplots. And I just felt like, man, I wish this movie would have touched on just a little bit of some of the subplots. I mean, I know it focuses on Harry and the prophecy and all that kind of stuff, and they did expand on the Ministry of Magic, and we got to see Sirius Black's house and that house elf and some of that kind of stuff, which is great that they, because you're reading this stuff in the books. Oh my God, I can't wait to see this stuff in the movie, you know? And I really was, I guess I got myself so overexcited that when I saw the movie, I was like, whatever. I mean, I like the movie. Don't get me wrong. I do like the movie, but I didn't like it as much as I liked the book. And that's usually the death knell. You know, you're like, I love the book, and then the movie, you know. But it was hard. Harry Potter is so hard to, like I said, you can have 4-hour freaking movies. You can't have 4-hour movies. And good thing they split the last book into 2 parts. That worked well.
That was a good decision.
That worked very well. So that was good that they split the Deathly Hallows into 2 books. But yeah, I love the Order of the Phoenix book. The movie, not as much, but I understand why you like it so much, Malcolm. All right, so that means that we're going to number 3 for Kelsey.
All right. This book I read for the first time, I think, in 6th grade. It was a required reading. And usually when they would say that, I'd be like, okay, whatever, I'm not going to like this book very much. But I fell in love with it where I read the whole book in a day and then had to read it again with the class because I just had to know what happened. And then they adapted it either that same year or a little bit after. And the adaptation, the movie, is fantastic. And that is Holes. I love Holes. So I don't know if either of you have that one or not. But.
No, but I loved Holes, and I loved the movie, the actors in the movie. I'll let you get into it.
Yeah. So yeah, I had just read the book at school before the movie came out. So then I go in there, and it is just such a sweet story. And it's also got this great young adult humor where it's really relatable and the jokes are super funny, but yet it also ages well, where I went back and watched it because my daughter just read the book at school too, and it's still sweet and it's still funny. Shia LaBeouf, I feel like that was an early onset of him becoming a star. Like, we had seen him and Even Stevens for years at that point. We're like, oh, he's the funny guy. You know, like, okay, awesome, he's funny. But then you got to see, it's like, okay, no, he's got some little bit of dramatic chops there too. So it's interesting to see what happens from there on out. And then now we've seen where he's blossomed into a pretty great actor. And it's cast so well. It is such a great story. It is perfect for, like I said, my daughter's age group. She loves the book. And so I just think it's a really great movie. And I think it was adapted very well.
Yeah, honestly, I was surprised that you had it on your list. But once you said Holes, oh my God, that's right. Sigourney Weaver, yes, Tim Blake Nelson are both fantastic in this. You want to see Sigourney Weaver turn into a bad guy? Watch Holes.
Watch Holes.
Nasty. Tim Blake Nelson, a very early role for him. This guy's really starting to. You could see these little indie roles, these little small roles. His career is starting to build and build and build. He still hasn't gotten to that A level yet, but he's building his career. And little roles like in Holes was one of it. But Shia LaBeouf, very good, very fun movie about a prison camp with kids and stuff. Just very entertaining. Malcolm, you got any thoughts on Holes?
Yeah, I read the book back when I was in school. But then I just didn't watch the movie when it came out. I watched it for the first time last year. I'm not a fan of the movie. I mean, I wasn't overly fond of the book either. But I think the movie, watching the movie sort of at 35, 34 years old, it doesn't get that same message if you're a kid watching it. So that's probably why I didn't connect with it as well. When I watched the movie, the acting's fine. I just didn't really like it.
Fair enough.
Wow, that's kind of a surprise, actually, Malcolm. It's all right. Hey, to each his own. All right. So that means we're moving on to my number 3, and now we have reached my Hunger Games, I believe. Yep. no, my number 3. You guys might have this on your list. I'm just going to say the name of it that way. We don't have to. I don't have to get into too much discussion about The Perks of Being a Wallflower. Does anybody have that on their list?
I've got it higher.
Okay, so we will not talk about that right now. I had a feeling someone might have that. All right, so that means we're going to skip my number 3 and we're going to go to Malcolm's number 2.
I mean, my 2 is Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Oh, all right, so that's good then.
Yeah.
All right, so Malcolm, you talk about Perks, and then I'll talk about Perks, and we'll throw it to Kelsey to talk about it after that.
Yeah, this is one that I didn't even know it was based on a book when I first watched it. I found that out after the fact. I've still yet to track down the book to actually read it, but I think this is a really great coming of age movie. I mean, you've got Logan Lerman, Emma Watson, and all that. Just really getting into it because I think this was Emma Watson's first movie outside after Harry Potter that she did, and it shows, and I think it was just a great movie. I think it's really fun to watch. I actually meant to revisit this for this, so I had more interesting things to say about it, but I don't. But I just, yeah.
That's all right, Malcolm. Yeah, it's got Ezra Miller. If you don't know Ezra Miller, he's the Flash. Also, we need to talk about Kevin. He's the buddy, kind of like the mentor character in this. And Emma Watson's a girlfriend of Logan Lerman. And Ezra Miller's kind of like the older boy in it, a little bit older, and so these other kids look up to him. And it really has an up-to-date kind of high school kind of vibe to it, where kids are getting into more adult themes in high school. It kind of took place in the 2000s, where it wasn't like early. You've seen movies like Ridgemont High. You've seen what's the Linkletter movie from '93 or whatever, '89. I can't remember. You've seen those movies, but they weren't based on books. This was based on books, and it really got that teen angst vibe, to it. And it had it's not easy growing up as a teenager. You got a lot of things on your plate with your parents and school and sports and girls that could be picking on you and trying to find the right cliques and groups and teachers. And there's a lot that kids have on their plates. And the book and the movie really captured that being that age is not just some throwaway thing, that it's an important age in people's lives. Teenagers, 16, 17, 15, 18, whatever, is an important age in your life. You're learning a lot about the outside world, but also you're still living with your parents and stuff like that. And Perks of Being a Wallflower really captured what it meant to be a teenager, growing up, learning, starting to kind of get out into the world. And I'll tell you what, I cannot say enough. I thought this movie was phenomenal. Yeah. Kelsey, you got some thoughts?
I have actually not seen this movie. I've seen the first 15 minutes of it because I have started it, and then I have children, things like that, and they'll come talk to me. I'm like, I feel like this is a movie I really want to pay attention to. So getting distracted 20 times is probably not the best idea. So then I'll pause. I'm like, I'll get back to it later. Yeah. And it hasn't happened. So you guys have inspired me this weekend. I'm going to try again and see if I can finish it. So.
Yeah, definitely. You don't want to, it's not one of those movies you want to start for 20 minutes and go and then come back. You just really got to focus on it because it's got a lot going on with these characters. And it's very, very, some of the stuff is some adult themes for teenagers. So that was my number 3 and Malcolm's number 2. So we're going to go to Kelsey's number 2 now.
All right. So this number 2, this author has written a lot of books that I actually am not a huge fan of, but this book and this movie hit me in the right time, the right spot, and that is Walk to Remember by Nicholas Sparks. Assuming neither of you have that one.
No, but I'll tell you what, I'm right with you. Nicholas Sparks, some of his adaptations are good and some of them aren't so good. but I didn't read a lot of them. I didn't read I've seen some of the movies.
Yeah, there was a time where I worked I still kind of work at a job where I could listen to audiobooks all day. So I was kind of running out of things to read. So I'm like, I'm just going to go through all the Nicholas Sparks books. So I've read pretty much all of them. I'm not really a fan for the most part, but A Walk to Remember is such a sweet story, kind of the same tones of Fault in Our Stars, where it's about somebody who is sick and kind of has given up any hope of love because they figure they're not going to get to experience that in their lifetime, and yet they find it. And it actually teaches the boy a lot about life as well. He was going through a really bad, dark road. He was doing bad things, and just being able to find such a pure love between him and Mandy Moore's character, it was very sweet and inspiring when I saw it when I was younger, and it's still a very sweet story. And it's sad, it's dark. You do cry because sad things happen, and it's a lot to go through for these two characters. But you still just you root for them. You hope something works out, and it does in its own way. And it's a very sweet story. So I thought I'd put that on there.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to mention Walk to Remember. Very sad. I don't want to get into spoilers if you haven't seen it. These movies, and I say this with the utmost respect. Nicholas Sparks adaptations tend to be contrived, and it's like they're meant to pull at the heartstrings.
Yeah,
and it's like every one of them has those moments in that. And that's what kind of sometimes it works in these movies and sometimes it doesn't. And in case of A Walk to Remember, it does work. This is one of the better Nicholas Sparks adapted books into a movie, one of the better ones. And so, yeah, it makes sense that you would have it on your list, Kelsey. Malcolm, any thoughts on A Walk to Remember?
Yeah, I think it is a good movie. Like Mandy Moore has great performance, and Mandy Moore's one of those singers which has transitioned to acting really well, and I just think it's a good movie. It's probably one of my favorite Nicholas Sparks adaptations.
Yeah, no, same here. All right, so that was your number 2, Kelsey. Now we're going to my number 2. Now we hit my Hunger Games, and Malcolm alluded to it earlier. Hunger Games Catching Fire. I'll tell you right now, this time around they had a budget. So they got to explore the world of Pan Am. They got to do some special effects. They got to do some great action sequences. They got to, the cast, you got to see Plutarch Heavensby. You got to see Donald Sutherland's, what the hell is his name? Snow. You got to see Elizabeth Banks, her character, Stanley Tucci. You got to see more of Woody Harrelson. They really added out to the cast in in Catching Fire, but the set pieces and just the world, I was like blown away. But you could tell the first one was more kind of condensed and smaller. The budget wasn't as big. Catching Fire, they expanded the budget because the first one made so much money and they were able to expand the world, and it really added to my enjoyment of the movie. And the script was better and the direction was better. I just absolutely loved Catching Fire. Had that crazy moment at the end. If you read the books, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, I just love Catching Fire. Of all the Hunger Games books, this is my favorite book turned movie. So, Malcolm, you got any thoughts on Catching Fire?
Yeah, Catching Fire is the one that that was tied for number 1 for me in this franchise. I think it's a great movie, and I think it definitely works as a good evolution of the character of Katniss, and just continue to explore the world.
Yeah, it does. Kelsey, any thoughts on Catching Fire?
I absolutely love Catching Fire. It's probably tied with me for the first Hunger Games as my favorite movies for different reasons. The first one is just kind of, I love introductions. I usually always tend to like the first movie better than the rest just because I love learning about the world to begin with, and that's usually what draws me to a story. But like you said, it turned everything, like if Hunger Games was a 10, this turned it up to 15 because like the costumes were more grand and beautiful, and the scenery was just like more broad. You could see more places, and the architecture and the set design, everything was just so much grander and more detailed, and you could see that the amount of money and effort and time that was put into developing the world. So yeah, for world building, it's incredible. The cast is amazing. One reason I love that book as well is the first book, you know, the everything happens and stuff within that world, and then they're forced to go back, and just like the idea as you as a character, if that was you, if like you went through all that suffering and pain, and you have to do it all over again, and you didn't think you were ever going to have to, just like adds that extra weight, I feel like, to that whole event. So I love that movie. It's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Malcolm, we reached that time for your number one.
My number one is one that some people may say is not truly a young adult book, but my research appeared on a lot of other lists of young adult adaptations. So I don't. As soon as I knew that, it was absolutely going to be my number one. And that's The Princess Bride. Princess Bride is a great movie. Just like you got great performances like from Billy Crystal, to Carrie Elways, to Robin Wright. It's just one of those ones that is a love story, and all the framing device of it being told to young Fred Savage and all that. It's just one of those ones that worked, and it's one that a lot of times when people visit it, it's showing their kids, and a lot of the times, kids don't gravitate to romance a lot of the way, but the way they did it with tongue in cheek, with the kids with it pausing, going, "Are they gonna kiss again?" Stuff like that. It just shows that story, and it's one of those ones that it kind of does remind you a lot of telling a story to your kids and all that. It's just a fun movie.
Kelsey, you got any thoughts on The Princess Bride?
Princess Bride is so iconic. It's one of those movies that I watched at a very young age, and as you grow, it grows as well. Like you start, like when you're a kid and you watch it, you don't get some of the jokes, and you're just like, oh, this is a funny story. Then as you get older, you're like, oh, that's hilarious. I did not understand that joke when I was a kid, and it's great. And it's such a sweet, funny, interesting story. It could have gone really wrong with the back and forth with him being told a story and it being filmed. Like I've seen other movies do something like that, and it's not as great. But it's like the example of that working. It is just flawlessly done, and I love that movie, and it's definitely one of the classics for sure.
No, absolutely. I had only seen this movie last year when I bought the Criterion of it for the first time. I had never seen this movie before that time. It was one of those movies that slipped through the cracks for me. Mm-hmm. But when I finally saw it, I just absolutely loved it. And, the six-fingered man, and then I was a big fan of Andre the Giant. I had watched the Andre the Giant documentary. I was like, I got to see this movie with Andre the Giant in it. And Billy, like you said, Billy Crystal and Carrie Elwes and Robin Wright and all these different people in this movie. I mean, it really is a fun movie, and it just kind of takes this kind of fantasy world and turns it upside down in a way, the fantasy kind of thing upside down. You got, my name is Amigo, what's his name? Inoue Toiga. What was it?
Inigo Montoya.
Montoya, that there's some of the quotes, is some great quotes in this movie, and it was really fun. It makes sense that it'd be your number one, Malcolm, because it is a great movie. I think I had it in my honorable mentions. All right, Kelsey, now we're going to your number one.
All right, we skipped this one earlier because I have this on my number one, but that is Love, Simon. I love Simon. It is based off the book Simon versus the Homo sapiens Agenda, which is actually, this is the only one on my list that I haven't read the book of, strictly because I saw the movie not knowing it was a book, and then went to go check it out at the library, and it was always 100 people with it on hold because everybody was wanting to read this book after seeing that movie, so I just ended up not getting a chance to. But it was also one of the best theater experiences outside of like and game that I've had in a very long time. It was filled with the young girls and things like that, and we would cheer at the right points. We would go, oh, at the right points. There was some catcalling and stuff when like certain things would happen. Like it was a very interesting theater experience I had not expected when I was going. So I think that added to it as well. Just this like sense of camaraderie. Like we're watching this young boy learn about himself and grow into the man he's going to be, and him just learning what love can be. And you're just rooting for him the whole time, and you're also crying with him all the time when things don't go the way he thinks it is. And it is such a heartfelt, good movie. It is just so well done, and I had to put it on my number one because I revisit it all the time. So I'm just like, I'm gonna love Simon Move, and I'm gonna watch this again because it's just so great.
Malcolm, I know you had it at your number 5, so talk about it.
It was my number 5 actually, but
I said your number 5.
Yeah, this is this is one that I've only really seen once, so I didn't feel comfortable putting it higher when I've only really seen a movie once. But it is one that I do want to revisit at some stage, and I think this is a great coming of age story for a few reasons. Because I think I don't know if there's been another one that's been a true coming of age story for people that are of that alignment, like that are like gay and all that. I don't think they've had a true sort of coming of age movie before this that was actually majorly released. I wish this had got some Oscar nominations actually, because I think it was a great movie. But yeah, there's not a lot more I can say about it. But yeah.
So I saw this I got a press screening of Love, Simon, and I'll be honest with you. I walked out of my press screening not the biggest fan of this movie. I thought it was a bit contrived. I could see what was going to happen in the first 10 minutes of the movie. I mean, 15 minutes of the movie. It's basically this guy who falls in love with someone he meets online called Blue. And the whole movie, he's trying to figure out who Blue is. And you know who Blue is in the first 15 minutes of the movie. In my opinion, I knew, I just felt it was contrived. I don't think this is a true depiction of romance and love. I'm not the biggest fan of Love, Simon, but I understand why people do like it. It did fit into a niche during when it came out. It fit into a niche audience when it came out, and I can understand why certain groups of people love this movie, and that I do not take anything away from that as far as the people that love this movie, why they love this movie, and why it fits into a certain group of people and a niche audience of people. I just feel like when I want romance, I'll watch Casablanca because that's my favorite movie of all time. And I feel like there's 100 times more romance between Rick and Ilsa than there is in Love, Simon. And romance that really you can see that just jumps off the screen, where Love, Simon, not so much. I know that's a tough comparison, comparing Casablanca to Love, Simon, but that's what I go to when I want to see romance. But so I understand that it's your number one, Kelsey, and I know why it's your number one and why people love it so much. All right, now we're going to get into my number one. Now it's my turn to talk about Harry Potter. My number one is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Like I said before, I'm a big fan of werewolves and Dracula and monsters and stuff like that. And when I read this book, I really got into the whole the Marauders map, Padfoot prongs, this group of kids, and they were buddies, and they had this map, and they got it to, what's the saying? What's the saying from the book? It's like we'll do no evil, or will get into some trouble or whatever. I can't
solemnly swear I'm up to no good.
Yeah, I solemnly swear I'm up to no good. To me that was like, oh, that's so cool. And that Sirius Black, we finally get Sirius Black, and it's freaking Gary Oldman, and he's amazing. And we got David Thewlis as a Lupin, and then we even Timothy Spall as the Rat, and then of course who's and then Snape's in there. You get some backstory for Snape finally, and you really get a expanding of the franchise. You get the Night Bus, and you get some interesting things. You're starting to getting into the darker side of Harry Potter, and I felt like it looked completely different than the first two movies. Christopher Columbus, I thought, was the perfect director to do the first two movies. When you're dealing with little kids, he has such a great pedigree with making movies about children, Christopher Columbus. But when you start seeing these kids grow up and becoming teenagers, you got a darker, and none of the movies look like The Prisoner of Azkaban. Alfonso Cuarón really expanded and made the movie look completely different than the previous two movies. And then, of course, the next movies after that have to kind of adapt a little bit of what he did. So he was kind of like the template for what went forward as far as Harry Potter and the Harry Potter movies. And I love the mystery about it. I love the visual effects about Prisoner of Azkaban. It's my favorite Harry Potter, and it's obviously my favorite young adult adaptation. Malcolm, you got any thoughts on Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban?
Yeah, I mean, I like Prisoner of Azkaban. This was the one I alluded to when everyone says it's their favorite. And it's great because and Alfonso Cuarón was the perfect one to set it off on its darker tones. I mean, I don't like Chris Columbus may have been able to do it perfectly, but I think it needed that change because I always say Prisoner of Azkaban was when the tone started going darker. A lot of people argue that say it was Goblet of Fire, but just because that's when Voldemort comes back. But I mean, Prisoner of Azkaban is definitely dark. I mean, it's not a fluffy story that is all full of heart, full of rainbows, and but it's a fun movie, and I like it too. I can't remember it falls on my Harry Potter ranking, but it's like, I think it's about the top 5 anyway. So,
yeah, Kelsey, got any thoughts on Prisoner of Azkaban?
Yes, I said earlier that Order of the Phoenix was either my favorite or tied pretty much, and this is the one that it kind of goes back and forth depending on my mood. I love Prisoner of Azkaban. It's one of my favorite books, and I love the tone change. I love the performances. Gary Oldman is one of my favorite actors, and even back then when it came out, I was, I think, like 13. This is the role that made me realize Gary Oldman is amazing. So I went back, started watching his catalog, and his performance, I think this is the best performance in the whole franchise for him, even though he's amazing. Just that raw, like, anger and sadness when he's like, you took away like 12 years of my life, it's so good. And that whole scene in the haunted house it is some of the most raw, like what I feel like a real genuine conversation would have been like if this would have happened. That's what we saw. It's an incredible movie, and I could totally understand why it's your number one, because it's definitely up there for me as well.
Yeah, I just love the darker tones. Like you said, the stuff in the Shrieking Shack was great. The stuff with Hagrid was really good, we got to see some backstory on Hagrid, which was really great in Prisoner as well. All right, so you guys got some honorable mentions, Malcolm? You got a couple of those?
Yeah, I did. Like, the honorable mentions were pretty much the ones I'd sort of mentioned that Kelsey had already brought up already on her list, like Twilight and stuff like that. Those are sort of another one that I did have on my mentions is probably Sister of the Traveling Pants. I think is a fun adaptation.
That's one of mine too. Yeah.
All right, Kelsey, you got some?
Yeah, I had Sister of the Traveling Pants as one of my honorable mentions. And Ready Player One. Those were ones where like I was trying to figure out if I wanted to put them on there, but I didn't get a chance to. And then I have a soft spot for the Half-Blood Prince as well for Harry Potter, where I thought about, because I figured that's one someone people aren't going to mention. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll talk about that one, but I ended up leaving it off. But there's some pretty good ones.
Yeah, I got The Sun Is Also a Star, the first Maze Runner, which was it really kind of set that franchise going. 5 Feet Apart, which came out I think last year. This one's really good. I was very, very pleasantly surprised with The Hate You Give. Wonder, and like I talked earlier, New Moon in the Twilight franchise. Wonder, Jacob Tremblay, Julia Roberts. The Hate You Give, of course, was that one of like 5 movies that came out about a cop shooting a black guy last year. But this one actually had some heart to it, had good performances, had a really good story. Obviously, it was based on a book, so it had kind of a basis in places. But I highly recommend, if you haven't seen The Hate You Give, oh, fantastic. This girl that plays Star, I can't think of her name right now. The main character, her name is Star, and she is fantastic in that. 5 Feet Apart. First Maze Runner, like I said, very good. The other ones, not that well. So those are my honorable mentions. All right, 5-1, Malcolm.
My 5 is Love, Simon. Forgot everything already. My 4 was Hunger Games. My 3 was Order of the Phoenix. My 2 is Perks of Being Wallflower, and my 1 was Princess Bride.
Kelsey, 5-1.
My 5 is Princess Diaries. 4 was the first Twilight. 3 is Holes. 2 is A Walk to Remember, and then 1 is Love, Simon.
And my 5 was Ready Player One. 4 was The Fault in Our Stars. 3, Perks of Being a Wallflower. 3, The Hunger Games: Catching Fire. And 1, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. Malcolm, where can you be found?
You can find me on Tape 3 Productions, where I host Late Night Tape 3 in Rankham. You can also find me over on Full Metal Media, where I run Full Metal Classic and I run Full Metal Random.
Malcolm is all over the place. Let's say it like it is.
Yes.
Kelsey, where can you be found?
You can find me at KelseyKins90 on Twitter and Instagram. I'm also on the Call to Action podcast, where we talk about all things Schmodown. So if you like Schmodown and want some Schmodown coverage, come check us out. I do have my own YouTube channel. Just search Kelsey Kirkland and click on my face. If you subscribe, that would be awesome. I focus mostly on covering the animated Harley Quinn show, but I also do movie reviews and get video gameplay and things like that as well.
And you can find me at Dan Skipbound on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. Also, I'm a film critic. I write about movies for a website called disappointmentmedia.com. I did not come up with that name. I just write for them. DISIPPIONTMEDIA media. Right now, there's not a lot of movies, but I am going to be writing a few movie reviews here pretty soon. One of them is Artemis Fowl. The Five Bloods is coming out. The new guy, what's his name from Saturday Night Live? I can't think of his name. His movie coming out. So I'm going to be writing some new movie reviews here pretty soon. But I've been doing a lot of anniversaries, 20th year anniversaries, 25th year anniversaries, 30-year anniversaries. So doing a lot of that. Finding some studio links, writing about some of that stuff. But yeah, so I also do, besides the Top 5 Weekly, I do a summer series. I did it last year. I'm doing it again this year, called Bleacher Features, where myself and a guest will talk about a sports movie, and we just break that sports movie down from beginning to end. So that catch those episodes of Bleacher Features, which will be coming very, very soon. And so for Malcolm and Kelsey, thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure to have you guys on, and you guys brought a lot to the episode.
Thank you for having us.
No problem.